Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's Meet the Analyst webinar, B2B Marketing Trends, What to Expect in 2023. I'm your host, Jeremy Goldman, Director of Marketing and Commerce Briefings at Insider Intelligence, and I'm here in our New York City headquarters, and I'm joined by my colleague, Principal Analyst Kelsey Voss in Seattle. Hey, Kelsey, great to have you here.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited for the main presentation today, but before we get into it, I'd like to thank Salesforce for making today's webinar possible and welcome Neha Shah, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Salesforce. She's joining us from San Francisco. Hi, Neha.
Hi, Jeremy, and thank you for including me and Salesforce on this webinar. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be on this webinar.
A few things before we dive in. We have a ton of information to share, but there's no need to take notes. We'll email you a link to view the slides and the full recording afterwards, but we do want you to participate. Just use the chat window on the right to submit questions at any time during the presentation, and we're going to get to as many as we can during the Q&A. So with that, Kelsey, let's get started. Over to you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hello, everyone. The top trends in 2023 are changing how B2B marketers can reach, engage, and retain customers. If they haven't done so already, B2B marketers will need to adjust their strategies in order to succeed. Today, I will walk through these 2023 trends, which focus on the buyer who rejects traditional B2B experiences, how MarTech is melding with company-wide tech, and how customer experience is moving into the spotlight. And then I will provide predictions for 2023. Let's start with the buyer. Who is the buyer in 2023? The buyer is younger, digital first, and is rejecting the traditional B2B experience. Millennials and Gen Zers now make up the majority of B2B buying committees. According to a recent American Marketing Association survey, and demonstrated in this graphic, 65% of buyers are between the ages of 18 and 40. These buyers grew up in a digital world, and they also expect to manage their journey on their own terms. There's a recent Forrester and Outreach survey of B2B directors who influence purchasing decisions across North America and the UK. And probably, to no one's surprise, these directors will go to a vendor's website, attend a webinar hosted by the vendor, conduct their own research, and evaluate the vendor on peer review sites, all before accepting an in-person meeting or remote meeting with a salesperson. These buyers want a self-serve and very personalized experience. B2B marketers need to meet buyers' higher expectations in 2023 and provide experiences that mirror their consumer experiences. Also, the buying committee for B2B purchases has grown over the last few years. It's bigger and more diverse. In the Forrester Outreach survey, they asked the participants about the complexity and time increases in B2B purchasing decisions. And 75% of those surveyed say the average buying cycle has increased in the last 24 months. And an equal 75% said they had gained more stakeholders involved in making decisions.
By the way, Kelsey, before you go on, I just wanted to interject. The diversity point is really interesting. I'm wondering, how does diversity impact the buying process these days?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. The larger buying committee, it's more diverse. There are more roles and responsibilities, and those involved in the purchasing process will have different objectives, different requests, such as the CFO wants something that's cost effective. Also, committee members will have unique needs or pain points that they want the product or service to solve. And these individuals have different preferences on how to engage, which means the messaging, the channels, and when is a consideration for marketers. So when marketers keep this diversity in mind, they have a better chance of success. So this leads us to our next trend, which centers around MarTech. MarTech spending is being driven by the shift in B2B buyers' buying behavior, but also in the company refinement of their existing stacks and alignment with stacks company-wide. We recently published our inaugural B2B MarTech spending forecast, which shows that spending grew in 2022. It grew at a slower rate than at the height of the pandemic, but back then there was an acute rush among B2B companies to build out and modernize MarTech stacks, which elevated spending levels by 2021. In 2022, B2B marketers continued to rely on MarTech's benefits and values in driving revenue and growth. And B2B marketers become extremely digital first now, like their buyers. MarTech spending will continue to grow in 2023. By 2024, B2B MarTech spending will be $8.51 billion, up from $6.59 billion in 2022. The problem many B2B marketers currently face is their stacks are unwieldy and don't align with tech and other teams. One priority for marketers is to streamline tech stacks for better performance and outcomes. The initial rush to implement MarTech during the pandemic is moving to a new phase of investment. Marketers are assessing their current stacks and making purchases to replace, refine, or enhance technologies to tailor them to their business's unique needs. But they need to work with sales and customer success to get it right. Data integration and alignment between marketers and sales is crucial to achieve revenue growth expected from both teams. And strategic collaboration with customer success teams drives customer retention and loyalty. Along with breaking down silos, another priority is on data, which is a foundational layer of MarTech. According to a recent survey by Antiriad, in this chart shown on the slide, you can see a good portion of marketers say their data isn't normalized across systems and their tools don't talk to each other.
Kelsey, that's really interesting to me, just because as a former reformed B2B marketer, why is the data normalization not getting any better? It seems like that's been a problem for some time, no?
Indeed, it has. So a major issue is tech stacks, and therefore their databases are built in silos, and they don't talk to each other or even match format, fields, etc. And though this was an inconvenience in the past, it's now an issue that affects multiple teams who have the same revenue goals. You can't possibly coordinate communications and messaging across marketing, sales, customer success, as well as product, HR, if the data isn't normalized. So, there goes your efforts on engaging customers across the full customer lifecycle. So there's a great need for solutions that help with this data normalization and hygiene, which also achieving successful integrations across various business systems. And many B2B firms will have a mixture of intent and proprietary data as well. Investments made for collecting, managing, and sharing data across tech stacks in various teams are vital. Investments will focus on the tech that meets a business needs, rather than bells and whistles that deliver little value. My mistake there. We know that MarTech landscape is enormous with ever-increasing long tail of MarTech solutions. This has led many businesses to purchase unnecessary tech that they think will solve all known and unknown problems. However, economic conditions and tighter budgets means that bells, whistles, and shiny objects should only be purchased if they can show tangible impact on marketing goals while drawing on minimal resources. MarTech's role is growing, therefore, the importance of tech that drives revenue will only rise. With a focus on revenue rather than simply leads, MarTech is reliant on CRMs. And according to the same survey from Antiriad, 61% of marketers in the US and the UK have a CRM in their MarTech stack. CRMs are traditionally owned by sales, but as B2B marketers are more responsible for their pipeline contribution and revenue, solutions that feed, sync, and measure data from CRMs are essential to show attribution and marketing's contribution to revenue growth. Beyond core marketing activities, B2B firms now consider the greater impact MarTech can have on customer experience, retention, and renewal growth, especially to prepare for economic downturns when new business may slow. Customer experience will continue to gain prominence in 2023. Customer experience supports B2B firms with recurring revenue and bolsters their valuable reputation in the market. Changing economic conditions, crowded markets, and a consumer-driven buyer will only underscore its necessity. Marketers must focus on retention, plus upsell and expansion, on loyalty, and on advocacy. In 2023, B2B marketers must focus more on the entire customer lifecycle, retention, and customer experience to gather a more holistic view of their audiences. This attention on the customer can provide marketers with insights they can use in new business campaigns, resulting in better engagement and conversion rates. Strong customer experience programs will center on brand, company values, and talent. A purposeful brand, meaningful company values, and attention to talent and current employees all foster a deeper connection with customers and encourage them to stay loyal. Especially among Gen Z and millennials, branding will play an important role in establishing trust. Buyers may even pay more for purchases from purpose-driven companies.
You know, one thing actually, if you don't mind, before we go forward, I was just curious. I love that chart from Verint about what B2B CX professionals will, what's going to have the greatest impact. But how do those professionals communicate the importance of CX to the C-suite?
Yeah, so you really need a strong collaboration between the CMO and the CXO. That is key. And together they should establish strategic CX goals with the C-suite. So the emphasis on CX is etched into the business goals of the company. I would also encourage everyone to check out our insider intelligence research on CX and customer success. We've had a few good reports published recently, which address the importance of CX on brand, revenue, and business resources. So next, spending will expand beyond core marketing tasks. According to September 2022 data from Integrate and Demand Metric, 54% of marketers in the US and UK expect to spend more on customer marketing in 2023. That's not traditionally considered a core marketing activity. Other top purchases by B2B marketers include customer experience tools, such as social media listening, usage metrics, and feedback mechanisms. For years, B2B marketers said they would start with the customer, meaning they would base their new business messaging on the needs of current customers. But now they really have to budget and focus on the customer to achieve business success. And then we come full circle back to the needs of the customer, who are, like prospects, expecting consumer-like experiences, self-serve, personalized content, and companies that are easy to do business with. So marketers should embrace B2C tactics for CX. To sum it all up, here are my predictions for 2023. Digital self-service will dominate the B2B buyer journey. B2B buyers demand a digital experience when researching, engaging with, and purchasing a product or service. Marketers must adjust to reach buyers in digital avenues in a consumer-oriented way and let buyers drive the discussion. Personalized, targeted content will be imperative. The mantra of provide the right content in the right channel at the right time to all stakeholders will be essential. Marketers that don't get integration right will miss the mark. The new standard for MarTech is it needs to integrate seamlessly across teams and contribute to alignment on revenue growth and customer engagement. As a result, B2B marketing requires investment in technology to better attract, engage, convert, and retain customers who prefer an all-digital experience. A robust marketing stack allows for efficient and effective use of all digital channels and measurements of KPIs. The importance of getting complete, normalized, and compliant data will only grow. Marketers will select tools that help with third, second, and first-party data collections to navigate privacy and regulatory changes, and to help manage and govern the data across multiple touch points. Marketers will own the full customer lifecycle. They'll have to build strategies from awareness to advocacy. Plus, they'll be tasked with contributing to a positive, inclusive culture for future and current employees. And marketers will widen their use of B2C tactics. Personalized digital experiences, B2C experiences now used for acquisition, will be applied to retain current customers, demonstrate company values, and foster brand loyalty. Now back to you, Jeremy.
Oh, wow, Kelsey, that was great. And I have a lot of questions for you. And I know we have a lot that are coming in live. We've had some really good ones so far, but please keep them coming. I'd love to bring back our special guest from Salesforce, Neha Shah, Senior Director of Product Marketing. Welcome again, Neha. And I had a question just to kind of jump right into it. How do you see the B2B buyer journey evolving in 2023?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jeremy. And in order to even think about how the B2B buyer journey will evolve next year, I would like to take a step back. So as we all know, and understand how marketing is evolving, right? So if you think of marketing, we've come a long way from the last century, from printed advertising to the current digital first marketing world. So while we as B2B marketers think that marketing is constantly evolving, what is also evolving at the same time is the expectations of our B2B buyers. And that's reflecting on how the buyer journey will evolve next year. And Kelsey highlighted some of the reasons earlier in this webinar, but to me, the biggest driver of evolving B2B journey is that buyers are expecting similar experience that they see in the consumer lives. The habits that we create in consumer life, we don't forget about it when we bring ourselves to work. So for example, when I watch Netflix, they are personalizing my experience in real time based on what I have watched, what I prefer watching, and how well they know me. What even surprises me is when I did even a big considered purchase, like when I last purchased my last car, I actually did all the research online. I checked in customer reviews. I knew exactly the car that I wanted. I placed an order on their website. So a big purchase like a car was made without talking to a car dealer or a salesperson in the car dealership. So that's why I think the B2B journey, buyer journey for next year will be more self-directed, and they will expect a higher level of personalization. We expect that to be more personalized and more self-directed.
So that's really interesting. Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you about that. But as it's becoming more directed, how you retain that human touch digitally, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing, right? Like we talk about how it's going to be more self-directed, but at the same time, there are scenarios where the B2B buyer want to talk to a sales team member. Right. So the challenge is whether they're looking or finding more information about your product or service on your company website, or they're talking to your salesperson, they want like an immediate response. They want to find the information that they're looking for effortlessly. So I think that's where the human touch comes into play. And that's where like the data comes into play. So one, as B2B marketer, you need to really understand the buyer, but all of the data regarding their behavior in real time. So for example, in order to retain the human touch, your marketing platform should be able to understand what pages the buyer has visited, what have they clicked, what content have they reviewed, so that you can surface the next best content or the next best action for them and give, like, as Kelsey mentioned, the right info at the right time to the right person. And then if they are talking to sales team member, because although it's becoming self-directed, there are scenarios where they would want to talk to someone, especially if they are like a new customer to your product or service, right? So when they're looking at new product or services, they want to talk to someone. Even if they used the product or service before, when their specifications changes, that's when they want to talk to sales team member. So there's this fine balance about how much self-directed they want and when they actually want to talk to the human on the other end. But the idea is because they want information to be personalized and personalized effortlessly and want an immediate response, understanding this data becomes key. So I think the holy grail is like, how well do you know your customer? And then can you leverage that data to facilitate human as well as digital conversation with them. And they both are important because the human conversation facilitates and drives customization, right? So you're tailoring to their need. And the digital tools really help bring the specifications, the visualizations for the buyer together. So we need both. Neither can work without each other. And the key thing is, whether you're doing B2B marketing or B2C marketing, it is all about B2H. It's about business to human on the other side. So providing them with relevant information based on where they are in their journey is key to retaining that human touch digitally.
One question about that. So obviously we're talking about the human digital touch, but what's the role that technology plays to better foster orchestration between marketing and sales alignment? Because I feel like that's such a key in order to serve your audiences if you're a B2B organization, right?
Yeah, that is a really good question, Jeremy, right? So when we think about most organizations right now, they think about their marketing teams and they think about their sales teams. But in order to deliver this level of customer experience, I think it's very critical. And we all know that these teams need to align and work and orchestrate together. So in direct, like they are part of the revenue engine for a B2B organization. So I would say like we need to break down those barriers, right? We, instead of thinking of like sales and marketing teams, these teams should think of themselves as a revenue team. And in order for them to think of themselves as one team, that's where technology plays like a critical role, right? So having one system that has all of sales and marketing data is critical. But as we think about us as an organization, we have lots of data. We have all this digital data from our marketing touch points, data that our buyers, our customers, our prospects are sharing with us. But then we have human data that our sales and service teams are capturing from their interactions with our customers. And then when we think of like outside, even broader than just a buyer, when we think of the entire account, we have a lot of data about the account, like whether it's a firmographic data about their industry, number of employees, or even their like buying intent data. So technology plays a critical role by bringing all of this data into one single platform, so you can really get a single source of truth for not just the buyer, but overall account, which is important. And then the ability for both marketing and sales teams to look at the same data, leverage that data to align on metrics and measure success across each team, that's going to be critical, right? And when I think about any marketing strategy, it's true irrespective of the marketing strategy. If you're doing ABM, technology still plays a very big role in identifying who are these ideal customer profile or ICP for your target segment. How are you going to align on what success metric looks like? So basically, any technology that helps you bring all of this data together helps bring these teams together so that they can align on the strategy, the metrics, and measuring success is going to be critical.
And I know we want to get into the Q&A in a little bit with the audience, but I wanted to ask you if I can take you just one more minute with you. How do you see the role of B2B marketers evolving in 2023?
Yeah, and I think Kelsey also touched a little bit about this in her presentation earlier, but I think like B2B marketers need to take on a new role that goes beyond marketing. I know we spend time talking about like sales and marketing alignment, but instead of just thinking about the funnel, the B2B marketers need to think about the entire life cycle of a customer. And for that, like the revenue team definition that we talked about earlier, Jeremy, that needs to expand beyond just marketing and sales. It needs to include even service teams, because what B2B marketers need to do is to drive personalized engagement, not just to build awareness, but also to drive retention and advocacy. They need to just not think about like, oh, how am I converting buyer to a customer, but really how to think about how am I going to make my customer our champion of our product. And for that, you need to like partner closely, similar to how they have been doing with sales teams, but also with service teams to deliver that customer experience after they become your customer. So I think that's kind of the first or the key way I see B2B marketers' role evolving next year. Secondly, it's we talk a lot about buyer here, we talk a lot about leads, but secondly, like B2B marketers need to think beyond that. They need to think about how they are going to engage the entire buying committee, which we saw earlier, right? It is going bigger, it is getting more diverse, and it is getting larger. So how are they going to engage the entire buying committee and drive and kind of personalize their experience based on what it is? It's like, certain times do they need to do account-based marketing? Certain times do they need to leverage broad-based demand gen conversion? So those marketing strategies are converging, and I think that's how their role evolves. And the third thing is about just data alignment between revenue teams, right? This whole concept of marketing, sales, service, that's crucial to attain revenue goals for a company. And we also talked about how we need to break down silos, not just within the revenue teams, but also how they're thinking. Like, rather than B2B, they need to start thinking about like the human on the other side, and how are they going to kind of evolve their relationship with the buyer, the human, and really think about business to human.
Thank you, Neha. That was really great. Now it's time to get into our audience Q&A. We've received a lot of great questions. Actually, one that kind of ties into what you were just wrapping with. How does a B2B marketer start to acknowledge that B2B shares so much in common with B2C, like that business to human concept you were just talking about, Neha?
Yeah, and I think that talks about how we see the buyer journey to be evolving, right? Like, it is all about the experiences. It is that level of personalization that that drives. I talked about some of the experiences I have seen in my consumer life and how I bring that along, right? So it is truly about delivering, understanding till what point the buyer journey is self-directed, and making sure the digital experiences they are having with your company is providing them with the right information at the right time. But also, like, how does that the human element play? Like, at what point they need to talk to someone in your team, whether it's your sales team or service team, and ensuring that the sales and service team have the right level of data to provide them with the right information, right? So as they're switching between their digital and human interaction with your brand, making sure that that feels personalized, that feels human to them.
Another really great question that we got in, Kelsey, your report mentions, or actually we should say that there was a report that this presentation is tied to some extent. What are some other trends that you see for 2023 that you weren't necessarily able to tackle today during the presentation?
Sure. So there are more tactical trends, say in video and AI. But on a more macro level, we see a few more trends that connect more to what I mentioned. And one is that sales and marketing will become more aligned on strategy and goals. And MarTech providers will support this in their platform design so teams can work together more productively and efficiently. Another trend is a focus on digital activities and engagement. The buyer's journey will focus around digital experiences. And although in-person events have come back, they will have a digital component. Hybrid events will continue, and digital interactions with sales will continue. I would say a third trend is the focus on building brand equity. Especially among Gen Z and millennials, branding will play an important role in establishing trust. I briefly mentioned brand, but it's a trend unto itself. Brands will need to reflect an authentic point of view on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is true for prospects, customers, employees, and prospective hires.
Sounds good. I think another one that's very interesting, somebody's asking that they manage marketing for their B2B organization, but given that you recommend taking pages from the B2C playbook, should I consider hiring B2C marketers for my department? That's an interesting one.
I think that's a great way to provide fresh perspectives. My advice is to hire smart, modern marketers. They should be experts in what they do, be it content marketing, digital marketing, or events, et cetera. And they have the mindset to be creative as well as data-driven and can focus on the goals of the business. And they must have a strong leader in the C-suite.
I agree with you, Kelsey. I think what's really interesting is being data-driven and being creative. So the other thing I would say is, like, think of your team. Is there enough diversity? So as we just learned from Kelsey, like, your buyers, buying committee is becoming more and more diverse. So are you bringing diverse perspective within your team? And when I'm building teams, that's one thing I say. It's like, not everyone's going to have all the strengths, but within my team, do I see diverse strengths to think about out of the box, right? That's like when I talk to a lot of marketing leaders, they are thinking like, the world is changing very rapidly. Like, just think about last few years, what we went through. So do you have a team that can, one, take data and pivot quickly, but also be a little bit more experiential in your marketing, right? Like doing something out of the box that resonates with your customers.
Great. We had another interesting one. What B2B market segments do you foresee having the most growth in terms of marketing investments in 2023? Kelsey, that might be a good one for you if you've noticed any one particular channel that's popping.
Channel or industry? I wasn't sure what you meant by segments.
I'm not, I think it might even be good to jump into both.
Well, I mean, tech is strong in B2B for sure. So that I think will continue in strength. Another area where I see a lot of strength and innovation is in e-commerce, in B2B e-commerce. I think there's a lot of interesting innovation there and a lot of good things happening there. And I think it's growing exponentially. As far as channels, content marketing reigns king no matter what it's there. Content is so important when it comes to messaging across the company and for customers, for employees, for new talent. To having that cohesive message across the board and then stemming that into all the content that's created. There's so much content out there that you have to break through the noise. So that channel in particular, I think, deserves particular focus and attention. Events are coming back, as I said, in-person events, but there's always going to be that digital component. So I think that's going to all in-person events will have a digital aspect to it, regardless of what had happened in the past.
Kelsey, like just to clarify, I think this is really valuable insights, but when I think of segment and what we think of segment at Salesforce, we also look at the company size. Like, do you see any trends different from enterprise to like SMB companies?
That's a really good question, and I would say there's been more advanced movement, maybe in SMB. I think SMB is these companies, if they've survived the pandemic, are strong. They're feeling good. They've survived, and they probably have really strong leadership. And they've developed tactics and strategies that are pushing them forward. So I see, and again, that kind of connects with the e-commerce that I mentioned. I think there's a lot of strong growth in SMB and in e-commerce.
By the way, before I jump into the next question, I think that's such a really good point. I know that there are a lot of enterprise MarTech firms, Salesforce included, honestly, that have upped their game in terms of their offerings for SMBs is something that my team has covered. So amen to that. But Kelsey, we have another question about content marketing, and you were just talking about that, so it might be good to jump into that. How do B2B marketers adjust their content marketing strategies in 2023, if at all?
Yeah, so I talked to this a bit about this in a report that I did earlier this year, and it has to come top down. CMOs really need to align their content marketing strategy with organizational objectives. It's especially critical today, as I mentioned, in this crowded market that's overflowing with this digital content. Marketing supports brand awareness, demand gen, sales pipelines, customer loyalty, and retention. So CMOs in particular, or equivalent, need to be super clear on brand and know how to communicate and understand the market. And then they and their team need to take responsibility for a customer-centric content marketing strategy, back to CX being important as well, and govern a good outcome with content that resonates. So you can't just focus on an editorial calendar. You can't just focus on vanity metrics. You really have to think more high level. What's the strategy? How does this help the business grow? How does it, feed the pipeline, grow revenue, and keep customers engaged as well as talent?
We actually had one that I think, Neha, would be for you. How do you train your B2B marketing organization to shift its mindset to advocacy and not just lead generation?
Yeah, and I think in order to shift the mindset, again, to Kelsey's point, it needs to come top down. There needs to be alignment between the leaders in marketing, sales, and service to include that, right? So when you're thinking about your marketing strategy, you're thinking about the entire life cycle, and it just doesn't end at like the conversion funnel. So I think top-down alignment is very important. And it is also important to think of metrics outside of like, let's see, like, if, as a marketing organization, you're thinking like MQLs, marketing qualified leads, but you need to really think about like driving revenue, retention, because especially in markets and macro environment like this, it is more and more important to retain your existing customer, when for a lot of companies, new business customers are slowing down. So it drives with like top level alignment, but also adjusting your marketing strategy and really understanding your marketing metrics, right? That goes beyond just the MQLs or SQLs. It's like, think about your customer, think about revenue. And that's the whole idea about the revenue teams.
Do you have any thoughts or research, I guess this can be for either of you, on what personalization strategies work best with B2B buyers? What are channels, mediums, and strategies that are resonating with B2B buyers as the landscape becomes more personalized and self-serve?
Well, I can
start. Oh.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one that comes to mind is web personalization. Your buyers, as their journey is becoming self-directed, they're spending more and more time on your digital assets, right? Doing that initial research. So can you personalize your website based on what you know about the buyer? A lot of times, what company they are from, what industry do they belong to. So if I'm part of Salesforce, and if I'm researching a vendor, it would be great when I go on the website, I see case studies of similar technology companies versus like a healthcare company, right? Which may or may not be relevant to me. So I would say like web personalization is a key element when I think of like personalizing experiences.
I would
Kelsey,
also,
I know I interrupted you.
yeah,
So.
no, it's okay. I would also add that this is where data becomes very important. The data that you have in the different systems across the company, you cannot send emails or messaging to somebody from marketing and then send something from sales and then something from CS. And all the name is different on each one. The way it's phrased is different on each one. You have to really have that consistency across the board. So it does go back to data normalization and breaking down those silos between not the companies, the teams, so that it's all one together to provide this messaging. Otherwise, personalization won't work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kelsey. I remember a bad experience that I had with a company where I had an open service case with them, and I got a marketing email about reviewing and rating them externally. I'm like, bad time. Like, you guys should know that I'm currently not happy with the service. So yeah, when such things happen, I think to your point, right? If we still have data within silos within our organization and don't have that single view about what's going on with the customer, that really hampers the personalization.
Right.
We had another interesting one, kind of a two-parter. You could focus on the first part or the second. Maybe good to start with Kelsey. What are some behaviors and needs most B2B buyers have? How can design teams be a partner in reaching those B2B goals?
Behaviors in B2B. Sorry, can you repeat that, Jeremy?
Yeah, just behaviors and needs that the typical B2B buyer has.
Well, I think this comes back a little bit to personalization. You really need to know your specific buyer and what your company specifically offers that buyer. I don't think there's one size fits all to this approach. I think the behavior we definitely discussed as far as more B2C, more B2H. They are not interested in hearing about a company wax and wane about how great they are. They want to know, are you going to solve my pain points? Are you going to provide what I need? Are you going to be easy to do business with? Do I need to really like do too much to get what I need from you? So they want that ease of use. They want people that they like to do businesses with as well. They do respect the businesses that are thinking, are being socially aware, et cetera. But I think as far as what they need really does come down to what does this company offer them? Or in some cases, they don't know what they need. So, it's up to the marketers to share that. But as design teams, if that maybe Neha can speak to design teams.
Yeah, I would like to. I mean, I echo with everything you shared, Kelsey, but the other thing that we are seeing in terms of what B2B buyers need is this is a tough macro environment. So currently, when I think of any B2B buyers, they are looking, before they select a service or a product, they are looking to see what is the ROI. And you touched upon this, Kelsey, when you talked about efficiency, right? So one is like, everyone has restricted budget constraints that you have. But if I select like, what is my ROI? And I think that's the design, that's when the design element comes, right? That's why I was referring to that case study experience that I had like on a website if I visit. But can you explicitly highlight like how would they get return on investment? Like how can they drive efficiency and productivity within those teams? I feel like in current macro environments, we are seeing a lot of B2B buyers looking at those elements versus just overall thinking about the product or service. So thinking about efficiency, productivity, their ROI that they get from your product or service is going to be important.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
It's almost like you could anticipate what the last question I wanted to wrap with. Kelsey, you have a fan. A client, I think, wrote in your report, accompanying report mentions economic uncertainty. Does this drive, or how does this drive the trends in 2023?
100%. Yes, it certainly does. That and the lessons learned during the pandemic that accelerated some of these trends that we see now. For instance, the shift to the consumer mindset in B2B. Further, with tightening budgets, the focus on buyers' needs, and again, like not the company's self-promotion, and then also MarTech streamlining for the biggest impact on revenue, and the focus on what you already have, the loyal customers, all spurred on by uncertain conditions in the economy and in individual B2B markets. So I think the economic uncertainty certainly does influence all the trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, well, this was really great. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. But thanks again to Kelsey for joining us, and a very special thanks to Neha and to the team at Salesforce. After I sign off, I'm going to figure out from Neha where I should not be transacting with e-commerce wise. But after I sign off, we'll be playing a short clip from the team at Salesforce, so don't miss that. Our eMarketer production crew behind the scenes also deserves a huge thank you for making this webinar possible. As promised, we'll be emailing you soon a link to the slides and the full recording. And before we wrap up, let me quickly tell you a moment about what's happening across eMarketer's media channels. You can register for upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars at emarketer.com/webinars. Also, I encourage you to register for our first ever live virtual summit. It's called Attention, Trends and Predictions for 2023. It's taking place this Friday, December 9th, so be sure to not miss that. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.